We have a green flag here at Hockenheim, and that means cars are on circuit for the pre-qualifying session for Fanatec GT2 European Series powered by Pirelli, the GT2 category that continues to grow, continues to deliver good racing, and we will have both races tomorrow. This is the final opportunity, though, for teams and drivers to make sure that everything is exactly as they need it going into the qualifying sessions, plural, that will come at the end of today. Because they get these two brief stanzas ready to determine the grids with standalone sessions for race 1 and race 2. This, therefore, gives the drivers another chance to get their eye in, to get used to the circuit. Some will perhaps not have raced here before. And it also gives us a chance to do some car spotting. The championship this year having gone from Paul Ricard to Misano and then to Spa. It runs in two classes. You've got the Pro-Ams and you've got the Ams. The AM Championship being led by Alexandre Leroy, who is a solo driver with his yellow Maserati. He's got 107 points to the 102 of the double driver combination of Jean-Luc Bobelic and Gilles Vannelet, and they in turn are 4 points up on Philippe Pret. Philippe is another of the solo drivers. Wins this year in AM. Jean-Luc Bobelic and Gilles Vannelet had a win at Paul Ricard and a win at Spa. Philippe Pret had a win at Paul Ricard and at Misano and at Spa, and one win at Misano to Alexandre Leroy. So AM has been pretty competitive in the Pro-Am class. That is being led by the KTM of Reinhard Koffler and Martin Koch, which took a win at Misano and a win at Spa. They tend to win race 2s rather than the opening race. More wins, 3 of them have gone the way of Leonardo Gorini and Carlo Tamburini, with one at Ricard, one at Misano, one at Spa. And the other race-winning combination, although they're not here this weekend, Matej Homela and Jan Krabec with their KTM. One of two things for this weekend is that we have an extra Audi, and that is from the LP Racing team for Stefan Rattel, the SRO Motorsports Group founder and CEO, and he is going to be partnered with Stefan Rossina for the first time. And also Hubert Trunkenpolt should return after having missed the races at Spa. So good to have him back in the championship as well. The races, 50 minutes. They are with a mandatory pit stop between 20 and 30. And the regulation pit stop time is for 112 seconds, unless you carry success as a race winner as a soloist, in which case it goes up to 14. And there is one of those solo entries, Philippe Pret. The KTM's getting set to go down in the pit road. Which one is that hasn't yet ventured out? That could be Klaus Angerhofer's car, which is concerning the team with that very distinctive up and forward front bodywork. That car that comes from the True Racing stable, and Sedi Salmini is the other driver of that with Klaus Angerhofer. The majority are two-driver entries these days. Only Philippe Pret and Alexandre Leroy, the two Maserati drivers, elect to go solo, and they might actually regret that given how hot it is this weekend. There is one of those soloists, that is Alexandre Leroy in the yellow and grey Maserati that runs a little bit wide coming out of turn 12, but survives the experience, and behind it is number 1 of Lego, Leonardo Gorini at the wheel. Alexandre Leroy exploring the curb on the outside there as he comes through, but should survive that. The last time the championship was here, back in 2021, where it was Mark Patterson and Anders Fjordbach as the two race winners. They won both, and the AM class, one went the way of Oliver Freiburg, and the other to Christophs, Ulrich and Lenz. But the championship has moved on a little bit since those early days, and we'll see this is the first time it's been to Hockenheim since 2021, which the best brands to have within GT2 are. Alexandre Leroy then pressing on up towards the Spitzkehrer here. Now, Benjamin Ricci, who returns to GT2, has gone fastest, now done a 1:45.675, and cancellation of lap times for, first of all, number 80 of Simon Birch, and also 88, oh dear, Stefan Rossina in the governor's Audi in Stefan Rattel's car. As long as it's not Stefan doing it, that's probably okay. Alexandre Leroy catching up to the traffic. That, I think I'm right in saying, is the Eric Dedonca Mercedes just up the road. And Alexandre Leroy now accelerating his way up to the end of the lap. But yes, the Mercedes not really helping here. He's not getting in the way deliberately. It's just that he's been encountered at the wrong part of the lap. So Stefan Rossina is the fastest. We've got a yellow flag at turn 13. And that, he says, looking out of his window, should be opposite me, but I can't see, unless the car's ploughed into the gravel and has hidden itself, who it is that's gone off the road. Now, green flag at that corner, and the next one that comes to the line is number 1 Maserati of Leonardo Guarini. So I think Guarini may well have just run wide through the dirt, so it wasn't a car going off and staying off, it was just a car running out of racetrack. Yes, confirmed. Number 1 Leonardo Guarini out and back at turn 13. Meantime, as Benjamin Ricci, pretty experienced GT racer these days, is the fastest. He's done a 1:45.662 to be at the top of the times. We've got 53 heading down the pit lane at the moment, Christophe Bourret. That's number 18, which is the Audi that Pierre Caffer shares with Michael Doppelmayr. Pierre Caffer should be the quicker, but Michael Doppelmayr, great enthusiast for his racing, will be well worth watching because he gets faster all the time, and he doesn't claim to be as quick as Pierre Caffer, but he does enjoy himself and puts a lot of commitment into his GT2 racing, and indeed in the Michelin Le Mans Cup in which he races. Co-driver Pierre Caffer is in the pits with Antonio Rankin.
Pierre, you've had a brilliant start to the weekend. The car is looking so fast.
Oh, well, I think it's one of my home tracks here in Hockenheim, so I know the track in and out. And yesterday we had a couple of problems, and I think that lap times are very tight together. So we will see how it will be today, especially with this heat. It's usually not fitting to the Audi when it starts to get so hot. So we will see, and I cross my fingers for tomorrow that we have some rain for tomorrow. Makes it more exciting.
Oh, okay, so you'd like the rain here. Is that because you know the circuit so well and you feel comfortable with it?
Yes, it's, this was my first track which I have driven when I swapped from karting to the big circuit. So from that point, I really like this track.
Oh, well, brilliant. Best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Very experienced driver, Pierre Caffer, of course, Le Mans class winner. Got a yellow flag briefly at turn 6. That's just gone in, so back to green. Try and unravel who it was that went off the road there in due course, but not Michael Doppelmayr as far as I can tell. Turn 6 is that Spitzkehrer hairpin, so you arrive there just a little bit too quickly and life can get rather difficult. Down to the pit lane, number 1. So Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini's Maserati comes in. New boots, new Pirellis go on that car. Leonardo Guarini then brought it in, I think stays on board. Don't think we've had a driver change on that stop. Yesterday, as I say, the cars had a free practice period from which various lessons were learnt and an opportunity to see what the cars were capable of. It was, perhaps not surprisingly, Pierre Caffer who was the fastest in that session yesterday. He did a 1:42.814. Well, we're nowhere near that yet. 1:44.5 from Martin Koch in 8:12, but it could be, in fairness, that not all the cars, not any of the cars, have had their quicker driver installed. Another lap time being cancelled for Stefan Rossina, way up the curb on the inside there, coming into turn 12, Martin Koch in the green KTM. That car from the MZR Motorsport Zentrum Reed stable. And Martin Koch, the man behind the wheel of it, who came through the GT4 European Series last year, raced briefly for a time in the Supercar Challenge, and he will pit at the end of this lap. So in he comes. At KTM down the pit road, and we'll see whether or not they're going to put Reinhard Koffer on board. The car that went off at turn 6, stopped and rejoined, was number 61, which had been quickest early on. There it is, in fact, Benjamin Ricci at the wheel. And although he has lost ground in the first sector of this lap, looking as though he's gained a huge amount in the middle, and he goes fastest of all, 1:42.919, 1.6 seconds up on anybody else now. So certainly Benjamin Ricci is back at the races, so to speak. Pressing on to very good effect. So the Mercedes AMG GT4 personal best again in the first sector. So there should be another improvement on the cards here for Benjamin Ricci. Goes up towards the Spitzkehrer once more. We've now got 98 Eric de Doncker under investigation for pit lane speeding. And that is 812. That is the Koffler KTM. So we'll see whether or not there's been a driver change once that car is released, because trying to peer into it at the moment is well nigh impossible. New tyres going on to number 80 there, which is another of the KTMs. That's the Simon Birch car, which has not yet been credited with a lap time. Simon Birch, who's been rapid this year, in fact, within the GT2 contest, having driven in the Danish Yokohama Super Cup. He's been a Le Mans Cup racer in a GT3 Honda NSX in the past as well, but Simon Birch now trying to spread his wings with different cars, different categories, different packages of racing as well. There's Eric de Donker's car. Then Eric de Doncker, one of the drivers on the very first, not SRO, but even before that, BPR grid at Paul Ricard, way back in 1994, which created the BPR GT series, which went on to become then the FIA GT and has morphed into what we have today, the GT3 cars. Eric de Doncker, inveterate racer, great enthusiast, and being partnered for the season in that car with Loris Hezemans. De Doncker, appropriately, as we see him in the Mercedes arena, for a Mercedes driver, heading with the road to himself at the minute, up towards the short straight that takes you down towards the stadium. And that gives an impression of how narrow it feels. Even if you're on foot, it feels narrow, never mind in the car. And down then through turn 12 comes the Mercedes. Eric de Doncker at the wheel. The best lap that he's done is a 1:48.313. And I don't think necessarily this lap is going to be any better. He wasn't faster in Sector 1, as you can see. He's found a bit of time in Sector 2. Having said all of that, it's not about chasing a lap time in this session. It's about getting the car ready, getting yourself confident. And we've had an absolute best as de Doncker goes through, stays 10 from the lap time. Was slightly better, 1:46.957. We've had an absolute best from Lego. There he is, Leonardo Gorini in number 1 Maserati. Gorini is into the Mercedes arena, whisper it, in the Maserati. But he's found about half a second over anybody else in that first part of the lap. So there, Gorini up through the approach now to turns 16 and 17, or if you prefer, the Sudkurve, one long corner. The sister car of Philippe Pret coming into the pit lane from the LP Racing stable. And there 88 back on track, and it's still Stefan Rossina at the wheel. So Stefan Rossina, who I don't think has raced an Audi before, is given the driving duties at the moment, at least, to familiarise himself with the car. And that's number one, Leonardo Guarini, who also is rather taking the majority of the work here to see he's happy before Carlo Tamburini is given the driving duties for the second part of the session. Carlo Tamburini, somebody new to Hockenheim. So an hour of running the teams get. The first quarter of it now done. Leonardo Guarini here, who's been a GT2 regular over the last couple of seasons, but go back over a decade, he was to be found on the grid in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. He has, when he came into GT2, been aboard a Porsche, but drove in the very early days of the Blancpain Endurance Series as well. He had an outing or two in what was then called the Gentleman Trophy, which sort of morphed into the Bronze Cup. Carlo Tamburini, his co-driver, fresh out of the Italian GT Championship, in which he was the runner-up in the Endurance in Pro-Am last year, so comes with a good track record. Through then goes Guarini, and goes fastest again, but a 42.628 now, putting him back ahead of Benjamin Ricci. Number 80 then, Simon Birch, venturing out after what felt like quite a long pit stop, really. And with an absolute best in the first sector, this is looking pretty good for Simon Birch, isn't it? Let's see what he can do. He's down in the middle, though, so he needs to find some time out of somewhere. Michael Doppelmayr is currently the slowest of those with a lap time. Klaus Angerhofer's car still not gone back out either. Simon Birch goes fourth on his first proper flying lap, 1:43.147. So Simon Birch, fourth fastest. There's the car in super slow-mo, rattling out over the curb. And no track limit warning coming for that, as another of the Mercedes sweeps on. This is the 888 Jörg Wiebahn-driven car that's up to second. Now, Jörg Wiebahn is another very experienced driver. Many years of experience and indeed success in the GT4 world. Going nicely right now. Jörg Wiebahn heading to the pit lane. So after improving last time, he's coming down the pit road, and also out of the pits, finally, has gone Klaus Angerhofer. So number 16 KTM finally is back on track after a very long stop. And it's not going all that quickly at the moment either. So whether it goes back in, we'll have to wait and see. But Klaus Angerhofer did an outlap, then this very long stop. So makes you wonder whether this is just an exploratory lap to see that all is well. Going very quickly though now, Gilles Vannelet, number 87 Mercedes, with two absolute bests. So Gilles Vannelet, 87, is the next one to look for, because that car in the last sector could well put itself at the top of the times. And there it is. Up to the timing line. Gilles Vannelet will break the beam and go top, question mark, and the answer is yes, he does, 1:41.921. So Gilles Vannelet, the fastest. Next question is whether or not anybody else is going to be able to do very much about that before the end of the session. I think they are, because in fairness, different drivers switch into different cars and cycle through, things can change. So Gilles Vannelet, the fastest, but you put Carlo Tamburini into number 1, and I think that's going to be well worth watching. Stefan Rossina, that I was talking about early on in the context of sharing Stefan Rattel's Audi, was fined yesterday, a suspended fine for not wearing the correct fireproof equipment. His balaclava had passed its expiration date that the FIA sets on these things, so there was a fine for that, but that was the only real drama to come out of yesterday. It was a pretty calm day for them all. So Klaus Angerhofer in this car that he shares with Sedi Samini, coming up towards the end of a lap as their 61 Benjamin Ricci started the car, still at the wheel of it. Drove the start of the year with Mauro Ricci, his father, but Benjamin, the quicker of the two, son, he is going to get the car back up, I think, to the pointy end here. He's down to 4th, but he won't be for long. Stefan Perrin has taken over treble 8 from Jörg Wiebahn. The Klaus Angerhofer KTM, we understand, had a gear shift issue, which they've now sorted, and also, in a way, playing catch-up, but getting the mileage in now. Klaus Angerhofer bringing himself up to speed. Benjamin Ricci the fastest, 1:41.093 when he went across the timing line. So now, at the other end of the times, we'll see how long it is before Doppelmayr and Angerhofer switch order, because at the moment Klaus Angerhofer is the slowest, but I think it's not going to be long before he's able to put himself up ahead of the Audi. To the hairpin comes Angerhofer, turns through the corner, and the former motorbike racer, who was tempted by KTM from 2 wheels to 4, has raced in the KTM Crossbow Battle, in which he's been a champion twice over, sharing with Sedi Samini, regular from the Creventic series before coming into GT2 a few seasons back. Gilles Vannelet, after going top and then losing the top time, has pitted. And Klaus Angerhofer's lap time here is going to be a proper one, and we'll see where it puts him, because at the moment, having not really got started in the session, it's at the foot of the times, but an improvement should come here. Fairly reserved coming out of the Sud Curve, you've got to say, but Klaus Angerhofer, who needs to beat a 48.7 to get himself off the bottom, goes through and does not. He does a 48.062. .47.9 in fairness is Michael Doppelmayr's lap time, so it's taking Klaus Angerhofer just a little bit longer. And maybe there is still a legacy of that gearbox drama in there somewhere just to get around that. The number of poles looking ahead for qualifying, 3 for Leonardo Guarini, 2 for Carlo Tamburini and 1 to Pierre Caffer. And in the AMS, 4 to Philippe Pret, 1 apiece to Alexandre Leroy and Gilles Vannelet. Now, Loris Hesmans here has taken over number 98. The double NASCAR European champion. Raced in TCR, we've seen him in the, what it was then, Blancpain Sprint Series for GT3 cars, and GT World Challenge Europe last year, but Loris Hesmans switching to something rather different in terms of the amount of aero it's got from this year. These cars do move about. They're AM friendly, yes, but they're not pussycats. You do have to work them. So over the timing line goes Loris Hesmans, up to third fastest. Good effort that, straight into the groove. So a 1:42.387 puts Loris Hesmans up to third fastest. So they had an hour of running yesterday, an hour this morning, and then this afternoon 2 20-minute qualifying periods, and then tomorrow the 2 50-minute races. Replay of Loris Hesmans using all of the curb on the outside of turn 16. And then that slightly unsettles the car, and it's sort of a second bite at getting the line coming out of that last corner. Now, who else do we have looking rapid? Loris Hesmans we touched on. Here is Hesmans once more into the Sachs curva, coming off that slightly banked left-hander. And on this lap, an absolute best and a personal best. So an improvement beckons most definitely for Hesmans here. Breaks the beam. Is that going to put him top? No, second fastest now. So Loris Hesmans does a 1:41.567. That's 4/10 down on the charging Benjamin Ricci time from earlier on. And then goes off the road at turn 1 and comes to a dead stop. And there it stays. Now, it's all gone so quiet, making me think that he's had to turn off the engine. To go straight on after you've just done a good lap either is a brake problem or something's all of a sudden manifested itself. It wouldn't just be running wide because you wouldn't stop and turn off the engine. So that's something rather sinister in there. Yellow flag, but I rather fear if you can't get it restarted, that will interrupt the session to move the car or help it be moved out of harm's way. Gone green again at turn 1, so the road clear. So Loris Hesmans will lose this lap. It's going to be a very slow one. It might be now that the main priority is getting that car into the pit lane. This is Philippe Pret then in replay. Fastest of the AMs early on, but now a little bit shuffled down in the pack, down to 4th in the class. So 0.4 of a second is the margin between the top two. And our leading AM is Stefan Perrin at the moment, having taken over this car from Jörg Wiebahn. And Stefan Perrin is another driver hard at work. The TCR racer, he's been in the Fun Cup, he's raced in GT2. And I would suggest that over the course of this season, and they've only had 6 races, remember, has just got faster and faster all the time. Car number 61 is losing a lap for the dreaded track limit offences. That's now Mauro Ricci in the car that was fastest early on in the session. He's taken over number 61 from his son. And track limit abuses come early doors in his stint. So they're up the curb in replay. Stefan Perrin, that super slow-mo shot that we like and the engineers hate because it shows the load that goes through the car and the tyres and the suspension. Uses the curb on exit of 17. Alexandre Leroy here, 8th overall at the minute. 2nd in the AM class. And Alexandre Leroy, who's not done that much modern racing. He's had a go in sort of 1990s GT cars in the Endurance Legend series. He's had a go in Carrera Cup France, but fully committed to GT2 this year. Coming up towards the Sachs curve. Down through the gears, turns right. Now one more corner up towards the timing line. Alexandre Leroy down in sector 1, better in sector 2, and at the end of the lap, as he goes by, Alexandre Leroy's lap time is slower, 1:43.6. Sister car here, or similar car, Philippe Pret at the wheel of it. And so after stopping at turn 1, Loris Hesmans into the pits. Slightly confused about what's going on with 61 because it's having different driver names up against it, but it's gone back to being Mauro Ricci now, and many of its laps are being cancelled. So I think it was being shown as Benjamin Ricci because that was the last lap time that stood, but Mauro Ricci is in the car, and the last lap that he did was cancelled, and hopefully this lap he's going to survive. He's coming out of the Spitzkehrer. It's in the stadium at the Sud Curva where Mauro Ricci is losing out most. That's where he's transgressing the most. Then number 16, Klaus Angerhofer, who still, interestingly, has not got himself ahead of Michael Doppelmayr in the times. He's not got himself off the bottom yet. Is this going to be a lap on which Angerhofer can find some more time? He goes through. So the KTM back out after a pit stop. Let's see whether the pace can come now. Stefan Rattel in 88. So we've had the driver change there to put the man behind SRO behind the wheel. Through the stadium he will come, traffic behind, and that is now Jean-Luc Bobelic behind Stefan. The Audi, which was one of the very first GT2 cars. It's interesting to see, and it's hard to get a proper handle on it really because we haven't seen enough of the cars this year, but whether the Audi is still as competitive or whether the development of one or two others has moved on and left that car behind. But it's good to have the Audis on the grid still. Through goes Stefan Rattel, but look at the way the Mercedes thunders by. Jean-Luc Bobelic moves through on the inside. Alexandre Leroy's car being attended to, suggesting it's had an off somewhere maybe. But work around that left rear corner. The noise suggesting that gravel is being blown out of that. Super slow-mo shot of Stefan Rattel. And that's how you should be treating the corner. 2 wheels on the tarmac, 2 on the curb. You see in the background, Jean-Luc Bobelic goes way wide, but he's angled the car so that he's got 1 wheel up. So Stefan Rattel to the line in super slow-mo. And at the moment, that car 11th in the times. Now, 812 has gone back out, as you can see. Martin Koch still behind the wheel. This team having been on the Pro-Am class podium in each race this year. GT2 that will go to Monza and Barcelona yet to round out its season. Klaus Angerhofer then still pushing on. Martin Koch very, very wide indeed, coming out of turn 12 into the stadium. And I don't think that's going to necessarily be an improved lap time, but we'll see. Bit of time lost in that middle sector, so Martin Koch up towards the timing line. And this car needs to be doing low 141s now to be on the pace. And that, from Martin Koch, is a high 142. And that off the road is Philippe Pret, who's gone bouncing way out wide. And that is coming into the stadium. So Philippe Pret gets back on, just going into the Sachs Curve. And he was way, way out wide. He was very nearly at turn 16. But Philippe Pret survives it, but that was a huge amount of speed carried into the stadium. In the car, that is a massively wild moment. It is described on the timing page as car 2 out and back. So quite a big, big moment for Philippe Pret, but he got away with it. But not surprisingly, he's brought the car into the pit lane for a tyre change at the very least, to make sure also there's no gravel where it shouldn't be. Stefan Rattal now getting into his stride and starting to bring down the lap times, no doubt, as the session wears on. The last one that Stefan did was a 47.0, comes through now, and a 45.2, so big chunk of time found. Klaus Angerhofer has got himself off the bottom, incidentally. He's 11th now, ahead of both Rattal and Doppelmayr. KTMs that are a rather different way of going about the GT2. I wouldn't say problem, but the GT2 concept. People like Porsche have built cars that didn't quite work. The Audi definitely did in the first year, but the KTMs have always been there. They've always been competitive. We've had the Brabham drop in and out as well. We've had Lamborghini on occasions. We've had Ferrari on occasions. But a mainstay of GT2 has most definitely been KTM. Now 53 is Pascal Gibon at the wheel of the car now, having shared this car season long with Christophe Bourret, two experienced French drivers. And this is a car that will carry 7 seconds extra in its pit stop when we get to race 1, on the basis of being second last time out at Spa. In the AM category, it is the Vanelay and Bobelik Mercedes that gets 10 seconds. 7 seconds to the Mercedes we were looking at, and 7 also, so 5 plus solo driver penalty for Alexandre Leroy. And then in the Pro-Am category, 10 seconds go to this car, the MZR Motorsport Central Breed KTM for winning, and 7 to number 80, the Simon Birch. And now they're up to the exit of turn 1. Goes still Martin Koch at the wheel of that. Reinhard Koffler not having very much to do this morning. I don't think he's got into the car at all yet. Lots of curb being used, coming out of turn 17. Now there, Michael Doppelmayr also taking charge for the hour, it seems. So Pierre Caffer from memory, was suited and booted, but not yet getting into the car. Klaus Angerhofer back in, and it could be now to put Serhi Samini into that car. So the KTM will rejoin. It's interesting that one or two drivers are doing so much mileage, given how hot it is today, but it's not phasing them too much, clearly. Number 80 then, the Simon Birch Thomas Anderson driven car you're looking at from the Pro-Am category. And that car now with Thomas Anderson at the wheel, looking a little bit more rapid, dare one suggest. Thomas Anderson, who is another driver from the Le Mans Cup and from the Danish Endurance Series. So he's taken over. One or two other drivers, work done for the moment. Loris Hesselman's car back in. And there off the road has been Carlo Tamburini, number 1 Maserati. So that's both the LP racing cars that have been off the road, and both within the stadium. Now, this is almost a carbon copy of Prett's moment, isn't it? Came out of turn 12, got away with it there, okay. So it's a corner later where it just runs completely out of road. Turn 13, way out wide through the gravel. And Carlo Tamburini gets back onto the circuit eventually. So into the pit lane comes Carlo Tamburini, and this will be a few minutes, I would have thought, to sweep the gravel out of the car, make sure it's not ingested anywhere nasty. So Tamburini's only, or that car I should say really, in fairness, is only 4th at the moment. More to come from it, surely. And the team might also want to know why it went off. Was there something fundamental, or was it purely driver error? Let's have a look at the car in super slow-mo, see if there's anything untoward there, but gravel dropping out of the back of it, you can see. Shows how much gravel is picked up, doesn't it, when a car goes off the road like that. So Carlo Tamburini peppering the road with the gravel, comes to the pit lane. And if the LP Racing team is happy to release the car, off he will go. He is. And at one end is an empty pit road now. So Tamburini rejoining, Philippe Pret rejoining as well, one hopes. And Thomas Anderson, having looked quick in the KTM, has now come into the pit road. So we have then Carlo Tamburini back out after his pit stop and trying to make amends for that. It would not be a surprise to have him up at the top of the times by the end, and perhaps the fact that he went off is proof of how hard he's trying. In the background, Philippe Pret, his teammate, back on track. So the two Maseratis together, and now that Stefan Rossina has got back into 88 and left the pit lane, I think we've got every car on track. terms of track limit warnings, Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch's car gets the most now, up to 13 for its assorted transgressions. And into the pit lane, having said we've got everybody on track, has just come Mauro Ricci, and Tamburini is off the road again, same corner. So Carlo Tamburini, fine everywhere else, comes into the stadium and gets it all wrong, off through the gravel again. Now, does he pit? Does he stay out? The team, I would have thought, would be getting concerned about this. Tamburini might be getting concerned about this, but no, he doesn't pit. He lets Philippe Pret go and then starts to build up for a quick lap. So Carlo Tamburini, presumably, is content in as much as the problem is with him and not the car. Let's see what he can do now on a proper flying lap. So Mauro Ricci into the pit lane. One or two others I thought had ventured down the pit road as well. They have, including 98, Eric de Donker. And it was an oil pressure problem, we understand, for 98 that brought that to a standstill trackside earlier on. So that car is back in. It does make one wonder whether it's still got its oil pressure problem, because it's not doing long stints. But the team will work on that, no doubt, ready for the qualifying session later on. We understand as well the gear shift issue with number 16, the Klaus Angerhofer KTM, was affecting the pit lane speed limit as well. So plenty of gremlins there. Off at turn 16 has been that car. So up at the Spitzkehrer, more drama for Angerhofer. And it is Sedi Samini, in fact, now at the wheel of that car. Now, I've been getting worried about 98 Mercedes. Antonia Rankin can perhaps shed light on this. She has found Loris Hesmans in the pit lane.
Loris, it really looks like the car has pace, but you're having a couple of problems.
Yeah, it's very strange. The car seems actually quite well balanced, so we were quite happy with how it's handling. But every time we come to the last corner, the car goes in a sort of emergency kind of an error. And we keep on having it exactly the same corner for both me and Eric. So every time we basically have no more power coming out of the last corner. So hopefully the mechanics can fix it, or at least the guys from A&G can find what it is.
Fingers crossed.
So a session-long problem. The fact that the car is second fastest is a tribute to their abilities, isn't it? But that car going into a kind of limp home mode coming out of the last corner, big frustration. So we've had a spin now for Sedi Samini up at turn 6. I think we've caught the end of that. We've had off the road a couple of times, number 1, Carlo Tamburini. Stefan Rossina back at the wheel of the Stefan Rattel Audi is up to 4th. And Pierre Caffer has taken over number 18. So that car has just come alive as well. Number 53 is the car of Pascal Gibon, that's now dropped to the foot of the times. So there should be more to come from that car before the end. Stefan Rossina here is, well, he was up to 4th and then had his lap times taken off him. Now, if this keeps happening, that's how many track limit warnings in that car now to 88. He's had 11. Still 13 to the Ricci's and to Thomas Anderson here are the most. But if all of this happens with regularity in the race, of course, then penalties will come. Carlo Tamburini, number 1, into the pit lane. And Eric de Donker under investigation for speeding in the pit lane in 98. Treble 8 had a spin as well. That's Stefan Perrin's Mercedes. And here is Stefan Rossina to try to get himself up to the top of the times. He goes 3rd, assuming that lap survives. 1:41.659. And I think all is good, as we are now into the final 10 minutes of this pre-qualifying hour. Stefan Rossina coming up onto the tail of Thomas Anderson here. Now 98 back out as they battle on with this sort of limp home mode problem. It's odd that it's only happening at the last corner as well. Why that particular corner? Eric de Donker is at the wheel and is down in the 2 sectors, but I think possibly now all they're concerned about really is trying to replicate the fault, see if they can get the error messages up for Mercedes AMG's engineers and technicians to then have a look at. Alexandre Leroy's Maserati ready to rejoin the session as others come in, including Pierre Caffer, who's had a quick shakedown in the 18 Audi. Number 24 Maserati accelerates away then for 8 more minutes of the session. Alexandre Leroy at the wheel of it, of course, the solo driver for TFT Racing. And 812, finally, Reinhard Koffler gets a go behind the wheel of that car. So the very rapid Austrian driver, Reinhard Koffler, now to threaten the times that have been set by everybody else early on in this session. So into the last 7 minutes as Koffler presses on. He has done, as you can see, a personal best within the first sector of the lap. And this should be a good run all the way to the end of the session, I would have thought, assuming he stays out. There's no reason for him to give the car back, I wouldn't have thought, to Martin Koch. He just needs the mileage now. Past that wall cam goes Koffler. Lost out a bit in the middle sector, though. But he's not done yet, that's for sure, as he makes his way now up towards the end of the lap. So starting here to get an idea of what a Reinhard Koffler effort might be like. And Koffler's time is 42.393, so not as good as was being done early on by Martin Koch in that car, but no doubt Koffler will get there. On board with Leroy with 5.5 minutes to go. Pascal Gibon and Jean-Luc Bobelic's Mercedes are the 2 cars in the pit lane at the minute. And Alexandre Leroy, oddly, it's quite a long way down. Now, that might well change by the end of the session, but we did see the team working on that left rear corner. It makes one wonder whether all is 100% in that car's operation. So there, Leroy up towards the end of the lap, comes towards turn 12 of the stadium. Blasts between the concrete and goes a little bit deep into turn 12. Too much speed carried, apex missed. So Alexandre Leroy gets away with that, but a bit of frustration creeping in maybe. Doesn't have to necessarily go all guns blazing in pre-qualifying, because there is qualifying to come later on. The only reason for a good time here being important is if for any reason qualifying were not to happen, but I don't think we're going to get much rain today, so that won't be a problem. Reinhard Koffler has just pitted. Alexandre Leroy has gone through and didn't improve. He should do next time. out of the Spitzkehrer comes 18, which is still Pierre Caffer at the wheel of the LP Racing Run Audi. Michael Doppelmayer's car. And Pierre Caffer very much the gun for hire in this. It's always fascinating to see how he can bring that car back into the equation when he takes it over in the second stint of the race that Michael Doppelmayer has started. So Pierre Caffer coming then into the stadium. Out now from the Sachs curve up towards the Sud curve and then the timing line, and Pierre Caffer should improve on this lap. He's done 2 personal bests. We're not seeing purples, but it's not the end of the world as long as the car is as Pierre wants it. Was 10th, moves up to 6th. That's why it's always hard to gauge with the Audi, because we know that Pierre Caffer is quick. Now, should he be night and day faster than anybody else? Discuss, but should the Audi be better than 6th? Yes, I would have thought it should. So 2 minutes and change on the clock as Pierre Caffer putting himself up to 6th is the big improver of late. And there is Philippe Pret, the Hong Kong licensed driver, coming down out through Mercedes Arena up towards the line. Got the stadium to go, but for Philippe Pret, been an interesting session this, with his big wide ride early on. 8th quickest he is. To the checkered flag imminently will come Philippe Pret. He'll get 1 more lap out of the session looking at the clock. It's time for 1 more for him. And that lap for number 2 Maserati is a 1:42.354, and then the next one is a 42.467, so he lost out fractionally. Time a little bit slow to come up on the screen that lap, but slightly down. So Mauro and Benjamin Ricci end the session then as the fastest in number 61 Mercedes. And Eric de Doncker, Loris Hesmans second. The margin between them 0.4 of a second. And then for third in the times, Stefan Rossina. And Stefan Rattel's Audi, Rossina doing the time. Checkered flag imminent. And the flag is indeed out, so it's going to end with the Ricci's as the fastest, and then number 18 Pierre Caffer heading up towards the end of the session as well. So here Pierre Caffer up towards the line, and that lap up to 5th, Pierre Caffer, with actually an absolute best in the last sector, so it all came good right at the end in a sense. Pierre Caffer just finding a little bit more pace. So that car up to 5th in the times. .812, Martin Kocher and Koffler's car heading towards the end of the session as well. And in the end, that is 7th. there's more to come from that, I would offer you, when we get to qualifying at the end of the day. Last couple of cars then take the flag. And the session giving them all the extra mileage required in order to become happy with setup, happy with circuit knowledge, and then to make sure that when they have these short, sharp qualifying sessions at the end of today, they're not having to worry about setup. They can concentrate purely on a fast lap, avoiding track limit issues, and trying to qualify as well as possible. So it is, in the end, the Ricci's Mercedes by 0.4 of a second. It was out of Ricci, so to speak, of everybody else. By the end, Eric de Doncker second, and Loris Hesman's Mercedes, and then third quickest, Stefan Rossina, doing the gun time in this car, which he flicks towards the pit lane, sharing for the first time with Stefan Rattel. Treble 8, Jörg Wiebahn to the pit road. And that's had a lap time taken off it right at the very end as well for exceeding track limits at turn 11, that being the exit of the Mercedes arena. So everyone to the pits, including number 16 of, in the end, Sedi Samini. He did the second part of that stint, the car recovering from its gear shift issues. And the order was the Ricci's Mercedes, the fastest then, from second quickest Eric de Doncker and Loris Hesmans, with Stefan Rossina doing the time for Stefan Rattel third. Gilles Vannelet fourth, with Jean-Luc Bobelic ahead of Pierre Capper, and then Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini, who had a rather checkered session, going off the road at least 3 times. Martin Koch and Reinhard Koffler next, ahead of Philippe Pret. Then the Stefan Perrin, Jörg Wiebahn, Mercedes, Thomas Anderson and Simon Birch, quite a long way back, but ahead of Sedi Samini and Klaus Angerhofer. Alexandre Leroy never really got going in that session. Odd. More to come certainly from that car. And Christophe Bourret and Pascal Gibon rounding out the order. So the highlights of that session, including 8.12, the Martin Koch, Reinhard Koffler curb hopping KTM, which should be a quick car. But flattered to deceive in that. 7th it was at the end of the session. Jean-Luc Bobelic and Gilles Vannelet got themselves to 4th, and a car that we expected much from ended up going off the road quite a lot. Number 1 of Carlo Tamburini and Leonardo Guarini. It was quick early doors, but then incidents aplenty at turn 13 rather did for it in terms of lap times. In the end then, that car ending up only 6th, and the top 3 in the reverse order. Third was Stefan Rossina, sharing for the first time with Stefan Rattel. Second going to this car, which had a kind of limp home problem coming out of the last corner. Eric de Doncker, Loris Hesman's Mercedes, and it was a similar car of the Ricci father and son, Mauro and Borgeman, that was the quickest at the end of GT2 European Series pre-qualifying.